Hello and welcome again to the third video here on the OSCP preparation guide I'm creating for you guys. Today it's time we're going to look at the MSF Venom command and various others. So without further ado, let's get started. So the MSF Venom is basically a small program you use that is shipped with the Metasploit framework. And just to avoid to write all this, I'm gonna copy paste because it's quite a lot. What you're basically gonna do when you execute MSF Venom is basically you write the command, you supply the payload, the local host, local port, and then whether it's an exe file or whatever it is, and then the actual name. You're diverting traffic, well, the actual binaries, the binary codes that are being generated to the file called shell.exe. This is the way you're gonna use the MSF Venom for the exe files, but there are several others way to use it. I'm just gonna show a few. So this is the exe way. You can also do it like with, you can use it for other stuff. This is just for PHP, so you can create a reverse shell for PHP. Pay attention to that this one in the top is made for Meterpreter, which is something that is inside the Metasploit framework. So the PHP framework, the PHP reverse shell is more or less the same. You basically just say raw, and then it's gonna be a shell for PHP. Now we could basically just try and run this because PHP code is a little bit more easy to look at. So let's just put in my usual try hack me IP address is this, so we can run this code here, and we get this shell.php. It takes a while, and we can then nano into shell.php, and I also need to write PHP, and then we can see all this code here is being generated for us, and basically that is our reverse shell. So that is one way to create reverse shells using the MSF Venom program. There are other ways you can use it. For example, if you want to create it for, let's say, JSP, you can upload a JSP file. Well, that is also one of the possibilities. There are more than just this, but what you see, the similarities is somewhat the same. You change the payload, the local host, local port is always things you need to put in. That's gonna be the same for you, and basically this is the JSP code. So how you know this is JSP code? Well, that is the payload, how it's gonna work. So JSP reverse shell raw, meaning that it's not going to be made to some sort of executional binary format, but it's just going to be output raw to the file. So I guess you kind of get the point with MSF Venom. It is quite nice, the way you can generate stuff, and basically if you wish to do it, you can create a bash script and then basically just call it reverse shell generator or refgen, whatever you're gonna call it, something easy to remember, something, you might even have your own tool set of commands you can call, and then basically you can just write whatever, shell you want and a name, and then it's gonna create it for you. But of course, this doesn't sky the limit. There's also one for Bash and Python and Perl and everything. It is more or less the same, just to show one more, the Python one, it is again pretty easy. You just need to pick the right payload, and then basically this is the file name. That is not the most important part, but you can always just rename whatever. If you accidentally call it PHP, it doesn't really matter, it's just a file name, just an extension. You can always just move it to rename it to a Python file afterwards. The important part is that you choose the correct payload, because that payload is where the code is being generated from. Alright, so I think this kind of rounds up the whole idea of having to use MSF Venom, and there are many different ways. I'm pretty sure if you just go ahead into Google and type MSF Venom, reverse shell, Python, exe file, stuff like that, it's always gonna be there pretty fast for you. Okay, so the one I usually been using is the one called Exe. You know, when I did, and this is going to be a very small when, I did the Windows machine pen testing. On a very rare occasion I do that. It's very normal that you use these Windows Meterpreter reverse shells inside Metasploit. I kind of feel like having a reverse shell on a Windows machine by normal means, the means that I use on a Linux machine, is weird for me. I really feel like having a reverse shell to a Windows machine through Metasploit, I feel that is more right to me. This is the way I think about it, so you should definitely think about how would you do it, what is your tool say, what is your methodology and way to approach compromising Windows machines. So earlier we did talk about that you use a Wget to download a file. It was one of my previous videos, before this one of course, and I talked about you can create a small web server using Python, and it's very simple to do that. If you're having Python 3 for example running, you basically just write this, and then you have a small web server running on port 8000, which is going to be the default chosen port if you don't type anything right there. So by that you can just go ahead and say wget and then download any file which is inside this current working directory you're in. So the Kali working directory, I do have a file called, let's see, e.js. So let's start the web server one more time, and then go ahead and open a new terminal basically and say wget http, and then it's gonna be like, in my occasion, I think I haven't tried it on my local machine before, so see, yeah, that did actually work. So you basically just write that, you know, you request the file and you can see that it's requested, and you get the typical, you know, HTTP headers, and well, not really a header, but you do get some of the information to the terminal here, and you can see what you're doing here, and you're downloading, and this is the way that you can, for example, upload, you know, linpiece to your compromised machine. You can also try use secure copy, but I never do that. I always just start a small web server and then use wget. Now, if wget is actually not working on the machine you compromised, you would probably need to do other ways to, you know, get the file downloaded if it's linpiece. I've seen some people do copy pasting, and I would say, yeah, you could do that. I personally never tried it. Honestly, I think it's a funky way, but I guess there's some other way that would be more easier to do. So this is just a quick demonstration of using wget. There are other ways for you to start a web server on in Python. You could write this, so it's basically Python HTTP simple web server, and this is gonna be on port 80, and yeah, it's pretty easy just to go ahead and write my IP address and then request any file that's gonna be in the working directory of, in this case, home Kali. So nifty small commands, and I would really suggest that you do that. PHP also got some nifty small web server you can run, and basically it's gonna be something like, let me see, export IP. So now I created a small web server using PHP. There's another way of doing it, and they also have their own version. You know, which one do you like the most? PHP version or Python version? No, I really don't know, because how common is it that, you know, a server, that a real Linux server that is compromised do have PHP or Python installed? I would say it's uncommon, but you know, yeah. Oh, sorry, not the compromised. The machine you are hacking from, how would... Yeah, of course. So I just reversed it in my head. I don't know why. Anyways, let's talk about, do compromised machines have Python installed for privexes and stuff? I would say probably not. Anyways, so you're going to run your PHP web server and your Python web server different ways, and if you like it, you know, it's gonna be the way to go. There are also other ways you can do it by Ruby and stuff, but you know, I guess covering the two most used ones is good enough for now. We're coming to the part of OSCP Privesc stuff, and I already have some videos about privilege escalation and Privesc already, but I think the more, you know, typical approach and the idea and the methodology, I would try to explain that a bit more in this video. So first of all, you also need to basically write ID or who am I to verify which user you are and which group you're in and stuff like that. So in this particular case, I'm user Kaylee, and well, that's about it. But there are many different, you know, probably you can be like data, for example. That would be very typical. But you can also be other users, depending on what account you use to get access with. A very common one is to basically just try sudo as you, and then, you know, try to get access to a user root, for example, but I'm being tasked for password, so I'm not really gonna have any successful right here. There's a specific command that I could try and copy paste to you guys here and run it, and basically it's gonna look for what did I write? For users that can log into the box, if they have the username as their password. Now the root user is disabled on my box, of course. The Kaylee user is definitely Kaylee, but you know, you cannot see whether the user's password is there or not. You know, you cannot look through it, but basically, it's not a bad idea to see what's possible and what's not possible. Use the command to your own discretion. Another very specific one is to go ahead and find out which kind of kernel version we're running on the box. So of course all this is for when you do have a shell in the box, and basically you can go ahead and search for exploits for the particular kernel version, and sometimes there is something on exploitdb and something you can find on Google. It's a very good, you know, enumeration command to well, find out if there's an exploit for the kernel. I guess that's about it. Also, just to name a one like search exploit is a very good command. You can go ahead and type Linux kernel, and you're gonna get a lot of, you know, exploits for Linux kernel here, and it's a lot of them. So let's just go ahead and do uname again and say the version we're gonna run, for example, is 5.10, and we're gonna have a search exploit for that, and it does have something here, you know, for Solaris. Well, this is Debian, so, and Red Hat, Fedora, Core 4, Ubuntu, you know, stuff like that. Doesn't seem that this particular version I'm running on as Linux Kaylee from the Linux Kaylee virtual machine website does have any particular exploits, which is really nice to know, of course. So you can also go ahead and well, basically for Privesc escalations, I mean, for Privesc there are other things you should definitely try and look for. There are different ways for you to look for writable folders. I would like to say, if you do something like this here, and I'm gonna press enter now, and you probably get a lot of spam. That's the command. You know, all these folders here are writable, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of them were like /temp or something, which is the folder that I, holy moly, that I usually, let's go ahead and see, grep/temp. Yeah, so one of them was /temp, and that is the exact folder that I talked about. So you can always, if you need to find a place where you can write your stuff, you need to create a binary file, you need to create something, maybe you got access to some compilation tools like compile, Zcode, maybe you got access to bash scripting, you should probably have that in most occasions. And you can find writable path this way. So that's a really nifty small command that I've used before. You can also go ahead and say like, okay, so instead of that, I basically just want to find, folders where I can execute stuff in. In this occasion, when I run it on my machine, I do not have anything. So I guess that's a bit unusual, but yeah. There are many different commands you can use find for. I basically want you to research find more, to create your own tool set, so when you got access to the machine, you want to find a place to upload your stuff, to execute your stuff, and basically find is going to be your friend. So when you have access to the machine, there are several scripts you can download. Whoops. One of them is linpiece. And linpiece, I talked about that before. Linpiece.sh. I think that is actually a domain, and basically you can download the linpiece script here, which is gonna check for all different kind of things that you could definitely be interested in as a priv escalation vector. So that is one of the tools that I usually suggest. You can also go ahead and do something called Linux priv checker, which is basically something you find on the URL here. Now I'm gonna really place it because it's gonna download, but in the downloads anyways, the domain itself, not the most interesting. Is hosting the Linux privesc. Let me just get it all. So that is an actual Python file you can download, and that is also something you need to execute on the machine that you have a shell on. So it's gonna try and verify how you do privesc escalation. So let's just go to the folder of download. Let's close this down and say download, and I have this. Where was it again? Linux. Can I just run it? Linux. I cannot write. Python 3. Linux. So it's just Python 2.7 then. Yeah, so I'm running this on my own machine right now. It's a Python 2 script. You download it, and it's gonna try and give some examples to how I can privesc on my own machine, and basically take over my own machine as root. So that is really nifty small script to use. There was also different other kind of scripts, like I'm gonna post the URL here. The sh script, and there's also something you can try and use. Sometimes they got different stuff installed. Also, you can go ahead and try the Linux exploit suggester, which is this tool here. It's a Perl script and something you basically need to what is the way you run this? Let's see. Yes. Program run without arguments. Return. Yeah. So there are some instructions to how to run this. So basically, that is another way for you to get really interesting suggestions for your exploitations on the box. Other interesting things about Privesk, and you know, it's a very long story, but I would definitely always just try. Can you see this? Can you get out the the password file? Because that file is going to indicate to you which kind of users that are present on the system, and basically it's gonna give you some idea. Also, if you can go ahead and well, this is just a virtual machine, but if you can go ahead and look at the shadow file, well, then you can get all the different kind of passwords. And again, this is just a virtual machine. I don't really care if you see this. And then you can get the raw hashes down here, which is basically just something for you to basically brute force, and then you can get access that way. And when you get the hashes, you know you have access. You know it's just a matter of time, and that's about it. But if they chose a really long good password, let's assume it's like 16 characters or more, you know, you cannot sit for the OSCP exam waiting hours or days or even months. You know, it's not gonna work that way. So but this is definitely something you should always try to see. Also, if you can access the sudoers, so the sudoers file, yes, okay, and inside that file it's gonna tell you who can execute what and everything. If you can add a new one here, like everyone, then anyone can execute anything, and yeah, so you can add your own username, like everything, all, and then you basically are god to the machine. That's some very interesting things to pay attention to whenever you're doing some Privesk on the box you have a shell on. Another very useful command for you is to go ahead and use the find command. I'm gonna just copy paste this here for today. That's gonna try and find all the files with the S bit set. So whenever you log into the system, you get a shell in the box. Initially, it's not a bad idea to just run this and get an idea if there are any files that I can misuse in some way to get root or another user. That is a very useful command. There are different variations of it. This is by letters, but also some write 4000 here, which is the numeric version of this text representation. Basically, this is almost the same as all the other versions. So I could think of 100 different other ways to I just mentioned a few. When you log in to the machine for the first time, you're getting a reverse shell, not logging in, but you're getting a reverse shell. You're gonna try and find your way. You have your initial foothold, but you also need to upgrade the shell. And upgrading the shell is another. This is some of the most important things in the world. So basically, I'm just gonna show you some stuff here in my cheat sheet, and what I'm really gonna say is, what you're gonna do is that if you need to switch to bash, let's say you do that, because if you're running this set, what is it called? The set sh shell that Linux Kali is running by default these days, then sometimes you need to basically switch to bash in order to do the to have success with the commands down here, where you clone the stuff from your own shell to another. Anyways, you can always just check which shell you're using by using this command. You spawn the Python shell first. That's gonna give you standard graphics, whatever they call it. It's not really graphics, just text, but they call it graphics sometimes. That's gonna enable you to do sudo-l. That's very important. And then you do, you export your term variable to xterm. Press Ctrl+C, do stgi raw echo, and you fu to return to the running shell. You put it to the background by doing Ctrl+C, and then it should basically give you full access to the shell as not full access, but it should give you, I guess you can call it full, but it should give you a better shell, upgraded shell, where you can use the arrows and tab auto-completion, stuff like that. So that is also some of the very irritating things whenever you have a stupid shell. You cannot really use Nano or VI or Vim or any editor because all the control hit or escape colon something, you know, it's not going to work for you. Yeah, there are ways to get around it, but it's the most pain in the elbows. So, anyways, I think that's a really good thing to just know and be aware of. Also, please do check the cron tab, you know, because that is another thing that's gonna be there for you to misuse in some way. So if the cron tab contains some sort of file, you can verify which file it is, and you can verify what the file is doing that's, you know, is being croned. You know, maybe you can misuse it and to gain some higher privileges because that file has been executed by that user that is running the file in the job, and then you can override it and do some path rewriting and stuff like that, as we talked about in the previous video. And that's not really a bad idea either. So I guess for this video, I'm gonna conclude it again. You know, it's gonna be almost 30 minutes. So until next time, take care.